Point of order, Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I seek to raise a point of order under Rule 13.2 of the Parliament Standing Orders, which provides for ministerial statements to be subject to questioning by members. While this rule ensures the opportunity for parliamentary scrutiny, I am concerned that such scrutiny is being undermined by the manner in which the Scottish Government is handling the forthcoming announcement on a possible Galloway and Ayrshire National Park. Specifically, the Government has indicated that it will make a ministerial statement shortly setting out Minister's response to a report submitted by Nature Scot on the proposal for a Galloway National Park. That report was submitted to Ministers on the 5th of May and it follows a public consultation process that closed in February 2025. Despite the consultation having closed more than 3 months ago, neither the Nature Scot report nor the consultation responses have been published by the Government or Nature Scot ahead of the statement today. That is despite a clear impression being given that the report from Nature Scot would be available, and despite the fact that consultation responses could be made available at no doubt considerable cost to the taxpayer if FOI'd. This withholding of information stands in contrast to normal practice, where consultation responses and an accompanying analysis are typically published in advance of any ministerial response, enabling MSPs to consider the evidence and engage in informed questioning. In this case, MSPs will be expected to respond to the Minister's announcement without having seen any of the underlying evidence that informed the Minister's decision. That lack of transparency raises serious questions about the compliance with the spirit, if not the letter, of Rule 13.2. In my view, without access to the relevant documents, Parliament cannot properly exercise its duty to scrutinise the Minister's decision. Presiding Officer, can you advise whether it is compatible with standing orders, particularly Rule 13.2 on ministerial statements, for a Minister to make a statement in Parliament and take questions from MSPs when they have been denied access to the key materials in which that statement is based and which could have been publicly available for some time? And will you raise this matter with the Scottish Government to ensure that future statements, especially those following a formal consultation process, are handled in a way that enables full and meaningful scrutiny by members?
Thank you for that point of order, Mr Smith. I think the presiding officer has made clear her expectations in terms of what good practice looks like in terms of the government keeping Parliament informed in relation to statements. I note the Cabinet Secretary will have heard what you said. She may well wish to reflect on that in responding to questions in due course. I will take some time to reflect further if there is anything that I or the presiding officer can add to what I've said, but I welcome the fact that that point of order is now on the record. With that, the next item of business is a statement by Marie Goujon on the Galloway and Ayrshire National Park proposal. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of her statement. Therefore, there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the Cabinet Secretary up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In 2021, the Scottish Government proposed the designation of at least one new national park in Scotland by 2026, subject to legal conditions being met. The proposal was debated in Parliament in June 2022 and it was strongly supported by all parties, with several members calling for government to designate new parks as quickly as possible and Galloway being described by some as a national park in waiting. In October 2023, we issued a public call to local communities and organisations right across Scotland to put forward nominations for their area to become Scotland's next national park. Detailed guidance on the nomination and appraisal process was published following a public consultation on the appraisal criteria. 5 nominations were received from Galloway and Ayrshire, Lochaber, Loch Awe, Scottish Borders and Tay Forest. The nomination process demonstrated the outstanding natural and cultural heritage that we have in Scotland, as well as people's ambitions for the rural communities that they live in. In spring last year, the 5 nominations were appraised by an expert panel and the Galloway and Ayrshire bid was selected to undergo further investigation. The proposal highlighted the area's diverse landscapes and stunning coastline, its outstanding biodiversity and its rich natural and cultural assets. It also made a strong case for the benefits that national park status could bring to local communities, the local economy and the environment, demonstrating how it could achieve for nature and for people. On the 22nd of July last year, the Scottish Government proposed the designation of Scotland's 3rd national park in Galloway and South and East Ayrshire, subject to legal conditions being met. We were clear at that time, however, that the proposal required further investigation and consultation with local people and businesses. This has been crucial in order to gauge the level of support and to understand people's views on more detailed aspects, including whether a national park could best meet the needs of the area and its communities. Nature Scott was appointed as the statutory reporter, as specified in the National Parks legislation, to carry out this investigation, to undertake a public consultation and report to the Scottish Government. Following an initial period of engagement with local communities, public bodies and stakeholders, Nature Scott ran a 14-week consultation process from the 7th of November 2024 until the 14th of February 2025. Over 5,000 surveys were completed and more than 1,000 people attended events that were held right across Galloway and South and East Ayrshire. The public events were independently facilitated by Outside the Box, an organisation with expertise in running community consultation events in an impartial, open and welcoming way. Sector-led consultation meetings took place with representatives from the farming, forestry, tourism, renewables and conservation sectors. Nature Scott also held meetings with the 3 local authorities and with community councils. The public interest in this proposal has proven to be huge, generating both strong support and strong opposition. At times, the debate has become quite heated. This is understandable, given how passionately people feel about their local area and the positive changes that they want to see. It was extremely important that everyone with an interest had an opportunity to have their say on the proposal, and I would like to thank all of those who took part in those discussions, who got involved in the process and responded to the consultation. All of the views expressed have been taken into account in the reporter's report, and I have given them careful consideration. I would also like to thank Nature Scott for its work carrying out such an important and extensive public consultation process in a very robust and professional way. I'm sure that members will appreciate just the sheer complexity and scale of this task. This has also been reflected in the independent review of the consultation process by the Scottish Community Development Centre. Their report states that Nature Scott's engagement on the National Park proposal achieved very impressive levels of public involvement. It also states that this consultation compares very favourably with others and has demonstrated elements of very good practice in the use of the national standards in Scotland. In its role as the reporter, Nature Scott has analysed the findings of the consultation and provided advice and recommendations to the Scottish Government. These have been set out in a report which has today been laid before Parliament and published on the Scottish Government's website. The report sets out that of those who engaged with the consultation, 54% of responses opposed the National Park proposal and 42% of responses supported it. The majority of consultation responses were completed by people living and working in Galloway and Ayrshire, with 94% of responses from those in the area or within 30 kilometres of the proposed boundary. Taking account of local responses alone, 57% opposed the proposal, while 40% were supportive. It notes that support was greatest among environment, recreation and tourism sectors, whilst landowners, land managers and those working in the farming, forestry and renewable energy sectors had the strongest reservations. Based on the evidence gathered during the investigation and consultation, the reporter has advised that, whilst it considers that the proposed area meets the conditions for a national park set out in the legislation, the proposal does not have sufficient clarity, nor has it garnered sufficient local support to proceed to the next stage of designation. I want to put on record my thanks to everyone who's been involved in this process. We have listened to the people of Galloway and Ayrshire. We have noted the views expressed by communities, organisations and businesses and respect those views. We've carefully considered the advice and recommendations of the reporter. We've weighed up the arguments for and against the creation of a new national park in the area, taking full account of the potential economic, social and environmental factors, and we have come to the conclusion not to proceed with the designation of a national park in Galloway and Ayrshire. Now, I realise that this decision will be very disappointing for those who have been campaigning for a new national park in Galloway over many years. I also recognise the huge amount of work and time that's been invested by a great many people throughout this process. And I want to thank everyone who has been involved in that process, including members of the Galloway National Park Association and the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire UNESCO Biosphere. The Galloway and Ayrshire proposal has generated a lot of debate about the role and value of national parks in Scotland more generally. Again, I am grateful to all of those who have put forward their views and perspectives on this during the consultation process, and this Government has listened carefully to all of the views expressed. Now, whilst we have decided not to proceed with the designation of a new national park in Galloway and Ayrshire in light of the consultation findings and the reporter's conclusions, I want to stress that this Government remains committed to national parks in Scotland and their vital leadership role in tackling the climate and biodiversity crises, promoting sustainable land management, sustainable food production and supporting the economic and social development of local communities. Now, there is plenty of evidence to show that our national parks are achieving for people and for nature. In Loch Lomond and the Trossachs, the National Park Authority is working proactively with a wide range of public, private and third sector partners to reduce carbon emissions, restore peatland, protect and restore precious wildlife and habitats, generate investment and jobs in the local area and manage more than 4 million visitors to the park each year. This is also true in the Cairngorms, where the National Park Authority is at the forefront of the ambitious Cairngorms 2030 Partnership Programme, which will see over £40 million invested in the park over 5 years to restore and enhance nature, reduce flood risk, support regenerative farming, improve active and sustainable transport, empower local communities, as well as improving people's health and well-being. We will continue to support our existing national parks, and we remain open to proposals for new national parks in the future. Any proposals need to be built on grassroots community support and consensus. As we set out in our most recent programme for government, this is a government that is listening and wants to bring people together, because the most effective solutions emerge when we work together in partnership. Now, we fully recognise and appreciate that the consultation period has been a really challenging time for local communities. It's also raised some really important issues that people in Galloway and Ayrshire care deeply about, from improved transport links, affordable housing and health services, to business investment, support for rural industries, environmental protections and opportunities for young people. What is important going forward is that we take note of those issues, those concerns and opportunities that have been raised during the consultation process, and that we place a renewed focus on delivering for the people of South West Scotland. There are very strong foundations to build upon, given the area's importance for sustainable and regenerative farming and forestry, renewable energy and other land-based activity. There are also really strong regional partnerships and structures in place, including the Regional Land Use Partnership and Framework, the UNESCO Biosphere, the Natural Capital Innovation Zone and the Responsible Tourism Strategy, all of which are supported by the region's Economic Partnership and South of Scotland Enterprise. In its role as reporter, Nature Scott has put forward some recommendations for ways in which these existing structures and arrangements could be further strengthened. South of Scotland Enterprise has also suggested that there could be benefits in exploring an alternative approach, drawing on the unique assets and existing structures in the south of Scotland. We are really grateful for these suggestions, and we now need to take that time to reflect on them and give them deeper consideration. And in the meantime, the Scottish Government remains firmly committed to working in partnership with local communities and organisations across the south west of Scotland to reduce carbon emissions, enhance and restore nature, support our rural industries, bring forward investment and deliver growth and jobs that enable the area and its people to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business. I'd ask members wishing to ask a question who haven't already done so to press the request to speak buttons. And I call first Finlay Carson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Cabinet Secretary for early notice of her statement. I declare an interest as being a proud Gallavidian, born and bred in one of the most historic and beautiful places in the world. Last term, I and others initially supported a Galloway National Park Light, which focused on the much-needed sustainable economic development. However, my support and others changed when the Butte House Agreement saw Green Minister Lorna Slater push forward a top-down proposal that felt more like a green nationalist park than a community-led initiative, a designation imposed rather than a designation requested. So, Presiding Officer, I welcome the Scottish Government's decision. This outcome rightly reflects the views of the majority of local residents, land managers and businesses. However, while the decision is the correct one, the process that led us here has been deeply flawed. The Government's approach was marked by poor communication, shifting expectations and a lack of transparency. Communities across Galloway invested time, energy and hope into what should have been a positive process, bringing communities together to improve a region. What we got ultimately felt like a top-down and predetermined process. We were continually told that a Galloway National Park would be different, but never told how. We should have had an independent review of existing parks so that lessons could have been learnt to form a firm foundation for the creation of new parks. Cabinet Secretary, can you explain what specific evidence or community feedback informed your decision not to designate the National Park, and how you intend to rebuild trust with the communities who feel this process has been mishandled from the outset? And does the Cabinet Secretary have any plans to amend the current legislation to address some of the identified shortcomings?
Always through the Chair, Cabinet Secretary.
Finlay Carson has raised quite a few important points there that I want to try and address. And I think, first of all, in terms of the criticism of the process, this certainly has not been top-down, and I think to make accusations that this has been predetermined from the start just isn't the case, because look at the announcement that we have made today. And if this was always about wanting to listen to what the people of Galloway and Ayrshire wanted to see in their area, that is what Nature Scott has given due consideration to through all their rounds of consultation, as much as anything else. I also don't think it's fair to criticise the process that led up to that point. There were actually extra steps added into this process to ensure it was a bottom-up approach. I know that the member will have met with the Galloway National Park Association, who I think I first met when I was appointed a minister in 2018, who've been building a campaign from that point. And I appreciate the reports which would have been circulated before the statement as well. Members may not have had the opportunity to get through all the full detail of that, but in the Scottish Community Development Centre report as well, they identified that the proposal that was brought forward was built on significant engagement work that had taken place up until that time. Now, in terms of how we move forward from here, and as I recognised in my statement to recognise how heated that debate had become and about the divisions in communities about this, that's why I wanted to come forward at as an early stage as possible and set out how we were moving forward on receipt of Nature Scott's report. And I hope, as I've been able to outline in my statement, we have seen some suggestions and proposals come through that detailed consultation and engagement process, which are really valuable. And I think it's really important that we take the time to get that right, to consider them fully before we then set out how to move forward. But I'm more than happy to meet with Finlay Carson so we can discuss that further, and if he has any other potential avenues that he'd like us to explore.
Colin Smith.
Presiding Officer, for too long Galloway has been Scotland's forgotten corner, and today the Government made it clear it wants to tear down the Welcome to Dumfries and Galloway signs and put up no entry instead. Why is it that every idea this incompetent, useless government touches falls apart? Why is their only ambition for Galloway to turn the region into a dumping ground for wind farms with no local jobs? The Cabinet Secretary knows she could have brought forward plans for Galloway that supported farming and forestry and helped them thrive. She could have built something special, made a change for the better. Instead, she's taken the easy way out and she's walked away. This do-nothing government has failed to set out an alternative to their inaction. No plan B to fix a local economy built on low pay. No action to stop the fastest depopulation in mainland Scotland. Now, we know that national park status brings over £10 million a year direct funding from the government. So can the Cabinet Secretary tell us, is that money still on the table, or is this just one more betrayal by a government that's given up on Galloway?
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, there's a lot in there that I absolutely disagree with and absolutely refute the allegations that have been made about Galloway and its region, because we recognise how significant Galloway and Ayrshire in the south of Scotland is. That's why we have invested so much across a number of different organisations. Now, when we look at the work that is ongoing in the area at the moment, but all the work that South of Scotland Enterprise is undertaking, when you look at the work that the Biosphere is doing, all the strategies, the Natural Capital Innovation Zone that's taking place as well, the regional land use partnership and the framework that's been developed on the back of that, that is because we really want to invest in the area and see it succeed proceed. Now, I recognise that there are issues, and I think a lot of that was drawn out in the consultation as well, some of which the member has touched on, which is why the next steps that we take here are so critically important, and we have to take the time to get that right. Now, as it was set out in Nature Scott's report, they have recommendations there about building on the existing structures that are in place, and again, those are the conversations that we want to take forward to see how we can move forward in a way that is going to benefit the people and communities of Galloway and South and East Ayrshire.
Emma Harper, to be followed by Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is clear that there is no current consensus from the local communities in Galloway and Ayrshire about the way forward, which is exactly why the Scottish Government consultation was so important to establish what the views are. The Cabinet Secretary has intimated this already, but can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to say more about how the communities can be supported to engage with each other for what's next and the future plans with regards to the best interests for Galloway and Ayrshire?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think first and foremost amongst all this is the people who live in Galloway and Ayrshire and their views on it. And I think that's why the extensive engagement that had been undertaken in relation to this proposal was so important. And again, coming to the point that, and it was remiss of me earlier not to thank Lorna Slater for all the work that she did in her role as Minister in taking this work forward and ensuring that it was a very much a bottom-up approach in contrast to some of the accusations that have flown around the chamber this afternoon. So we want to hear what people in Galloway and Ayrshire have to say about this and how they want to move forward. Now, the recent consultation, as I've touched on this afternoon, did flag a number of different issues, and I touched on some of that in my statement as well. And that varied from concerns about the climate and biodiversity. There was also a really strong interest in looking at our transport and improving roads, looking at issues around affordable housing, economic development more broadly, as well as trying to bring forward opportunities for young people too, so that we can keep people in the area and that it is thriving and flourishing. So, as I've already outlined, we see that as being really important. We've listened to the responses to the consultation, which is why we want to take the time to make sure we get the next steps right.
Sharon Dowie, to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary mentioned the important issues that people in Ayrshire care deeply about, from roads, affordable housing and health services to business investment, environmental protection and opportunities for young people. Those concerns have not changed. Can the Cabinet Secretary tell us more about what the renewed focus will look like and when it will start delivering for the people of South West Scotland? The statement also mentions strong regional partnerships and structures in place, including the UNESCO Biosphere. Concerns were raised recently about the long-term funding for this. Will the Cabinet Secretary commit to looking into this?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. There was a couple of different points in there, and I'm more than happy to follow up with Sharon Dowie in more detail across the number of different areas that she mentioned. I know that Finlay Carson had actually asked a question earlier in relation to the transport links, an example to my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, around investment in the A75 and the work that's progressing there. So, notwithstanding those issues that exist in the area, there is a work going on across a number of different areas to try and to address that, and the investment to follow it too. The member also touched on the biosphere, which does tremendous work. And again, that's where the reporter's report is so important, because it talks about the structures and how we could really build on that and strengthen that going forward. So that's really what we want to look to try and address, have those discussions with the various organisations and then see how we move forward from there.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's vital that we continue to support nature recovery and improve biodiversity in Scotland, something the Cabinet Secretary has already touched upon. Can the Cabinet Secretary say a bit more about the Scottish Government's work to combat nature loss?
Cabinet Secretary.
It is, of course, vital that we tackle the two biggest crises that we face today, which of course are climate change and biodiversity loss. And regardless of whether there's a national park structure in place or not, we still have to make sure that we are taking action to address that. So I know that members across the chamber will be aware of the work that we've taken forward on biodiversity, publishing our strategy and our biodiversity plan, which includes a range of over 100 actions that we're taking to try and address the biodiversity crisis. And we are trying to deliver on that through, of course, the Nature Restoration Fund, which has provided over £65 million to projects across Scotland, and it's funded over 250 projects so far, really to try and address some of the most acute issues that we're seeing, and again, do that across Scotland. But of course, the Nature Restoration Fund isn't the only mechanism we have. When I look to my own portfolio, the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme is also looking to tackle some of those issues as well, so that work will very much continue.
Sarah Boyack, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Cabinet Secretary, given that Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park generates £540 million a year and supports over 6,000 jobs, and that the expanded Cairngorms National Park generates £419 million annually and supports 4,400 jobs, what is the Scottish Government's plan, and what specific actions and investment will they make now to ensure that local communities in Galloway and Ayrshire don't miss out?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think Sarah Boyack has raised some really important points there about the value of our existing national parks, and there really is no question of that. When you look at the jobs they support, I think through some of the stream data, I think Loch Lomond and Trossachs, £540 million the industry's worth. When we look at rangers, how they're able to manage visitor management, there isn't really a question around that. But ultimately, the decision we've reached today has been based on the work that's been done by Nature Scottish Reporter, their consultation with the communities on the ground and their recommendations. But of course, as I've outlined in some of my responses this afternoon, it's not possible for me to set out today exactly what the path forward through this is, or what investment there will be, because again, the discussion and how we take this forward, engaging with the bodies that already exist in a way that was proposed by Nature Scot, is going to be really important to make sure that we get this right.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Mark Ruskell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As the Cabinet Secretary outlined in her statement, many stakeholders and respondents to the consultation highlighted the local economy as central to their considerations. Can the Cabinet Secretary expand more about the Scottish Government's work to boost and develop the regional economy in the south of Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Rona Mackay for that question, because as I've outlined this afternoon, there are a range of ways in which we are investing in the region, because ultimately we want it to be thriving and we want the economy and the regional economy there to be successful. But when you look at some of the work that's been undertaken by some of the organisations in the area, I've mentioned South of Scotland Enterprise a few times this afternoon, and they're continuing to deliver real tangible benefits for businesses and communities right across the south of Scotland. And when you look at last year alone, the agency invested £13.7 million across a variety of different projects, including the Chapel Cross Energy Transition Zone, when you look at the Borders Innovation Park as well. And when you look at the economic benefit that comes from that, it's helped to create and safeguard around 1,700 jobs. Now, that's just South of Scotland Enterprise, and there are a range of other bodies and mechanisms where we are continuing to invest because we want to see the region be a success.
Mark Ruskell, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
The Galloway National Park was a once-in-a-generation opportunity for local communities to deliver investment in tourism, the food economy, nature, transport, housing, while getting more local control over forestry and wind farm developments. All of that has been lost because of a failure of government and some local politicians like Mr Carson to show leadership and to counter an aggressive misinformation campaign from landed interests. Communities in Perthshire, meanwhile, showed majority public support for a new Tay Forest National Park, despite facing a similar aggressive misinformation campaign. Will the government now re-engage with that bid for Scotland's third national park, or has it simply given up on the idea altogether?
Cabinet Secretary.
As I outlined in my statement, and as I hope I'm quite clear in Chamber today, the Government is of course open to considering looking at establishing more national parks in Scotland. But obviously I think we need to make sure that we get the process for that right. So I'm not going to set out today, we're not looking to revisit other bids or other proposals. And in fact we only reached the stage of bringing forward the proposal to designate Galloway as a national park because it met all the criteria that had been consulted on and established as well. So we're not looking to do that at the moment, but of course we remain very open to that in the future.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Eleanor Whittam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, as Sarah Boyack was right to remind us, when done properly, national parks can provide jobs, be a boost to local economies and help with biodiversity in our fight against climate change. It is clear that has not happened in this case, and we did not win hearts and minds to bring this project to fruition. I want to interrogate an aspect of this statement where the Minister said that, the Cabinet Secretary said that the Government would be welcoming of future proposals for further national parks. Does that mean that all proactive work by the Scottish Government to identify future national parks will now cease?
Cabinet Secretary.
Sorry, I'm not entirely sure of where the member is trying to get in that question in terms of whether the Government is actively looking to continue that process. We established this process a number of years ago with various stages, a number of which we had consulted on to ensure that we were developing a bottom-up approach and ensuring that if we were to propose a national park, it would be in an area where there was the strong community support for that. Now, we have been through that process and we've exhausted that process, and I think the statutory process which we then followed in appointing Nature Scotland's reporter, and on receipt of that report, again, we've reached the conclusion that we won't be taking that any further. So that's not a decision that I would be revisiting or committing to revisit today.
Eleanor Whittam, to be followed by Craig Hoy.
Can the Cabinet Secretary advise how the Scottish Government can help support the vital work of the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere Partnership, the first UNESCO biosphere in Scotland, to fully realise their potential and aims of creating sustainable tourism across my area and a constituency of Carrickcumnock and Doon Valley, as well as Dumfries and Galloway, which has to date received an amazing buy-in from community groups, towns and villages and businesses which are working to increase biodiversity efforts in low-carbon days out for residents and visitors to the area, especially now when the biosphere's funding and sustainability is in question?
Cabinet Secretary.
Eleanor Whittam raises some really important points there. Firstly, about the importance of the work that the biosphere undertakes and how important it is in the region, but also some really valuable points there about sustainable tourism and encouragement of that. And there is a lot of work going on in relation to that too. Now, I know that the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere received a new funding package from the South of Scotland Enterprise to support its important work, both in tackling the climate and nature crises, but also to support sustainable development, including sustainable tourism. So we really welcome that funding that had been introduced, and as I said in my statement, we are going to take some time to reflect on the reporter's recommendations, which very much talked about building on the existing structures that are there, and then before we then set out next steps.
Craig Hoy, to be followed by Christine Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I welcome this decision, given the very clear levels of concerns amongst campaigners, stakeholders and communities locally. And I recognise that this consultation has led to real concern and anxiety amongst those communities that have long been neglected by the SNP. Will the Government now undertake to come forward with a real plan for investment in rural areas that can deliver for communities in Dumfries and Galloway and East Ayrshire to support tourism, agriculture and infrastructure in the south of Scotland, something that the SNP has failed to do over the last 18 years?
I completely refute everything that Craig Hoy has set out there, because we have a very strong track record of investing in all of those areas that Craig Hoy has talked about. And he touched on agriculture there, and specifically for my own portfolio interest. It's this government that decided to protect and maintain direct payments for farmers in Scotland when his government down south completely did away with them, didn't do anything to protect the agriculture industry. So I'll quite happily stand by the record that my government has in investing in rural Scotland.
And Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I declare an interest, as my sons are Gallovidians, and I lived there for many years myself working. I saw the beautiful landscape buried by the Forestry Commission overplanting Sitka spruce. So can I say I find the reporter's results disappointing, I understand, but disappointing, as Galloway could well do with increased tourism opportunities, providing work to redress the imbalance in demographics. Can I ask, and I don't, the Cabinet Secretary knows it, can I ask if South of Scotland Enterprise, was they interested in the economy, have any options open to the Government?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Christine Graham for her question, and when Christian Graham talks about South of Scotland Enterprise, and as I touched on in my statement, they've actually put forward a proposal as to how we could move forward. So again, that's something we are giving strong consideration to. But I think it's important to recognise we're building from a really strong base here. Now, I absolutely recognise some of the concerns that came through the consultation and some of the issues we've touched on today. But when you look at the strength of some of the sectors that we have amongst all the communities, when you look at farming, forestry, the renewables industry, all these different important industries and sectors we have across the south of Scotland, and as well as some of the organisations I've mentioned, I think we're building from really strong foundations, and that's what I'm keen to build on going forward.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the ministerial statement on the Galloway and Ayrshire National Park proposal. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.